Welcome everyone to a really, really important evening. There's nothing like seeing a bunch of Jews together. This is the ultimate triumph. We're here, we're proud, we're defiant, we're gorgeous, and we're alive. Woo! Yeah. That doesn't get a clap. I don't know what does. Yeah. You know, sometimes people are working for you behind the scenes and you don't even know what you would do without them because you don't even know what they're doing for you. That's the kind of experience we had when we were organizing this with that woman over there. Her name is Betsy Krieger. Betsy is our City Council President's Jewish Community Liaison. You might not have known that there is such a thing, but there is, and it's Betsy, and she's an angel, and one call helped us so much. And I thought to myself, that's kind of like God. Betsy, I hope you can handle this, but I thought, that's really godly, like behind the scenes, orchestrating things, making things happen, and you don't even quite notice that they're there until you really, really need Him. So thank you, Betsy. Thank you to the Almighty for bringing us here today. And I want to also say thank you to the Baltimore City Police Detective and Public Information Officer, Jeremy Silbert, who's on duty tonight. And to Officer Kenny Bixstein and the Baltimore City Police Department, who are patrolling, they had to do a lot. It seems simple for just us to gather, but as we walk downtown, they're going to have to totally stop traffic for us. So how awesome is that? And that takes a lot of work. Okay. We're just no long speeches tonight, except for our very special one with Charlie Harari, which won't feel long at all. What I want to do is just run you through the schedule of events, because it was so complicated to write that when we made the flyer, we just didn't write it all out clearly, but here's how it's going to be. In just a minute, I'm going to introduce Rabbi Shlomo Porter for a moving testimony, and then Yehuda Bergman will sing another song together with us. Then we're going to walk down to the B'nai Israel synagogue that you all know and love, and then we're going to have beautiful refreshments and wine, and a really powerful talk by Charlie Harari, who just arrived here from New York. Thank you for coming. I want to introduce Rabbi Shlomo Porter, who is the Dean of the Eitz Chaim Center for Jewish Studies. I do have more thank yous to make to HaShoah and to Rabbi Miz and the Dylan Patton. I don't want to keep you, but it's really been a pleasure working with the B'nai Israel crowd. Really, give yourselves a hand. Fantastic people. Really special people. And welcome to Rabbi Porter.
Thank you, Rivka Malka. Okay. Good. In a few minutes, I would like to give you a sense of the reality of the Holocaust. As a son of Holocaust survivors, everyone here is keenly aware of 9/11, 2001. But in that day, I was in synagogue saying Kaddish for all of my family who were killed on that same day, 61 years earlier. And in 1942, September of 1942. And my parents lived in a little town called Manyevich. There were 2,000 Jewish people, probably another 2,000 non-Jewish people who lived in this town. And the Nazis came through Ukraine, and they came in 1941, and they took all the able-bodied men for work, but it wasn't for work. They killed them. My grandfather was killed in September 1941. And my father, blessed memory, escaped and found out that they were coming, so he went and hid in a cemetery about 5 miles away until they went through the area. And then he finally came back. And a year later, in 1942, early September of 1942, they gathered all the Jews in the little town of Manyevich, as they did of every town in the Ukraine, and they put them into ghettos. And my father had heard that the purpose was not to ship them to Auschwitz, not to take them on trains like you see here that to commemorate train tracks were taken in Auschwitz. No, they would kill them right outside of town. And so my father knew that there would be only one way to survive would be to escape and try to go into the forest. And he tells my mother, Fega, let's go to the forest. Let's try to escape to the forest. My mother said, I have two little girls with my parents. I can't leave. It's too dangerous. You do what you have to do. So my father made a heart-wrenching decision and said, I have to go, and if you survive, go to this non-Jew who's in the forest, and his name is Ivan, and he'll know if I survived, and he'll know where I am. So my father took off the yellow patch that he had on his jacket, front and back, and walked through. We had already surrounded the small town of Manyevich, Ukrainian policemen, Nazi, and with machine guns and guns to make sure that no Jew survives. My father took his shirt, put it out over his pants like a Ukrainian peasant, put a little basket of eggs under his arm, and walked as if he was very calm that he was going to his farm. And he walked out of town between these guns, and he was not killed. He came into the forest and then hid in the forest for a few days, and then went to Ivan. Meanwhile, he had heard that the entire city had been gathered together on Shabbos morning, Saturday morning. They went house to house and took every woman, man, child, and took them and shot them in a mass grave. So my father thought that everybody had been killed, and he wanted to do revenge. And so he went to Ivan and he said, Ivan, give me a gun, give me some bullets. And my father had been drafted in 1923 into Polish cavalry, and he knew how to shoot and knew how to ride a horse. So Ivan gave him 150 bullets, a rifle, 2 grenades, and took them to the partisans. There was a group of Jewish partisans in the forest. My father then went on bombing missions, blew up Nazi trains, and was taking revenge for his children and 25 members of his family that were killed. A few months later, he had heard that some relatives of his had survived. My mother, that Friday night, had gone across the street in this ghetto to her cousins to try to think of a plan of perhaps starting a fire, and in order to confuse the Nazis and to be able to escape into the forest. But she couldn't find her cousins at home, and a Ukrainian policeman took out a gun and was going to shoot her on Friday night. And she said to him, "You're going to kill us all tomorrow. Why are you wasting a bullet tonight?" And he put down his gun, and she was afraid to cross the street again because it was full of Ukrainian Nazis ready to kill any Jew who broke curfew. So she hid in a barn. She ducked into a barn, fell asleep in the straw, and in the morning they went house to house, barn to barn. My mother says, "I saw them they didn't see me. By Sunday, the entire city was quiet. It was a ghost town. There was nobody alive. My mother waited another day. She heard nothing. And finally, she went out and she discovered that her cousins had survived. Also, had been hiding. And she went into the forest with them. And for the next few months, they survived on berries. When my father heard that there were some relatives, he wasn't expecting my mother. So, my mother weighed 80 pounds. He carried her back to the partisan camp, and she got well, and she became the nurse. And my father continued going on missions to bomb Nazi trains. If you saw the movie Defiance, that's exactly what my father did. And my mother cooked and took care of. There were 250 Jews hiding in the forest, and another 250 fighters. They survived 2 winters in the forest, and miraculously they came out of the forest. My brother was born in 1944, in December of 1944. And my parents came to America and ended up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, of all places. And they had an aunt in Milwaukee. And I was born in 1947. Everything to me was real. My father told the stories, but he told another story, a major story. And the story was, now he comes to America and he can't find work because every Friday he gets fired because he wants to keep Shabbos. So my father, my mother decide that they'll keep Shabbos. My father won't work on Shabbos.